Everybody, it's Matt Fury from Avid here at NAMM 2019. Another amazing session that we had on the stage today. Joining me right now, film composer Anne Dern, orchestrator Andrés Montero. If you're not familiar with film composing or orchestration, your mind would have been blown. Mine was. And I want to start with you, Anne, because the first thing I took away from watching you present was, how does she get started? I mean, in any sort of creative process, whether you're, writing a novel or writing a film or creating music, very daunting taking that first step. What is it? How do you do it?
It is very daunting. I mean, it's a lot of sitting at the piano and improvising, and a lot of. I tend to walk around my studio humming stuff because I'm a very very melodic composer. Like outsiders would see me and probably think I'm crazy doing that. Sometimes I take a walk and I draw from things that I know, or I listen to other music that I think would fit the project well. I pretty much just look at the picture that I have or the artwork that I have, depending on what I'm working on. And then I just try to figure out, okay, what sound goes with this image.
You had mentioned working in video games as well. And I was really struck by the fact that when you're both working on a film project, you have a point of reference. There's something you were working from, and it's a little more rigid, so to speak. Whereas in video games, that's not the case?
Not entirely, unless you're scoring a cinematic, these little snippets in between. But when you score the actual in-game music, it's different. You usually get artwork from the developer, so the character designs and the maps and just everything that the designers of the game thought of. You will get the lore of the game and of the character and everything like that, but you will not usually get visuals in terms of picture or gameplay unless it's an online game that's out already and you're just working on an expansion of it. So there you're a lot more free to, experiment, and you can choose the form freely, whereas with film and TV, you're pretty much locked into the picture and the edit that they chose to make.
So during the presentation, we got to see your Pro Tools session for a project that you're working on together. It was a really cool thing. You walked through all the different instrumentation and then cleaning up the MIDI part of it to give to Andrés. Andrés, when you get that first... I guess, do you hand him a session? Do you hand him what is it that you get from Anne?
I get a MIDI file in a stereo mix. That is the mock-up. That's it.
Is that literally the first time that, when you're working together, that's the first pass, like this is the first time you see something from Anne, or are you working with her along the way as she's still composing?
No, that's the first time. That's the first time that I see her work, and I listen to her music, and it seems very simple, just two files, but once you open the MIDI file, then you see all these million tracks and stuff that you have to figure out when you have to go into Sibelius and make a score.
During the presentation, Andrés, you talked about how important it was to have a template. Can you describe a little bit about what that template is and how you work from that throughout the film?
Yes. The first thing that you do in the template is set up the ensemble. So the first thing is talking to Anne and ask her what's the orchestra. How many instruments we have. Do we have woodwinds, brass, percussion, etc., etc. So once I know the instrumentation, I set up my score, put in the right names and everything in the right place. So I don't have to go in the middle of the project and then start adding new instruments and everything. So that way it gives me a really good start point, to start making all these scores, because in a feature film you're not doing only one piece but multiple pieces, when it's about an hour and a half of music. So it's really important to have your template set up and also your shortcuts. That's very important. The shortcuts is going to give you a really nice workflow, and that way you make sure you're going to go as fast as you can on a project like this.
So, when you're watching a film, listening to music, as a consumer, you don't think so much about the mechanics of it, how it was put together. You're either moved by it or you're not. When you're both watching a film and you're hearing the music, do you have a critical ear towards it where you're saying, well, that's an interesting choice that they made, or you're thinking about how they put it together?
Yeah, I mean, it usually happens in movies that aren't that good. So they give you the kind of the opportunity to, step back a little and just analyze what they're doing. If you're really drawn into a movie, it doesn't happen so much because those are the really good ones where the visuals and the sound just merge and you're just so in it that you don't realize it, unless there are parts where, the music is really in the forefront. But on those, I usually just notice, in the end credits when I'm one of those people that sits through the entire end credits, and that's when I notice, the music was great too.
So we talked about how it is a linear process where, Anne does the composition, hands over the MIDI file to you, you pick that up. She's obviously made a lot of choices in terms of instrumentation in Pro Tools, and then it's your job to go off and realize that with actual musicians. Do you ever go back to her and say, well, listen, I'm not really sure why you chose to do this, with with an oboe here, or, is there any sort of collaboration or back and forth after you get that MIDI file?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that are hard to hear when you're doing a mock-up is sometimes mixing problems, and also maybe wrong notes that are hidden in all the stuff that is going on with percussion and brass and et cetera, et cetera. So when you listen back, the mock-up sounds great. You cannot really hear that. But as an orchestrator, I have to make sure everything works at the session, at the recording session, and it goes smoothly. So if I find, one note that it was a mistake, and if I know that we're recording this separate, let's say we're just going to record the woodwind separate, and I know that there's one note that is not quite right, I make sure I don't change the note and mess up the music. So I ask her, hey, by the way, I found this thing, just make sure this works, and let me know if that's intentional, because sometimes it's intentional. You want some dissonance.
That has to be a delicate conversation sometimes. Are you sure you really want to have that note there?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sure she's pretty good about it. Well, it was a really incredible presentation. Here at NAMM, there are so many different types of workflows, so many different types of, music that you can come learn about, audio post-production techniques, and we were really blessed to have you both with us here today to do this presentation. It's a shame you couldn't have been here to see it wherever you are, but if you want to see more presentations like this, just download the Avid Link app. You can watch it. We're streaming this stuff live from NAMM, so it's a really great opportunity to learn from people like Anne and Andrés about what they do, and get that Avid Link app and watch it for yourself. Thank you both very much for joining us today, and thank you.